Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 23 of Tour of Japan, the review series for the Super GT or Jgtc machines of GT6. And we're featuring another NSX model in this particular episode, but actually this particular NSX is actually arguably the most unique NSX in the game, at least of the Super GT models. Why do I say that? Well, interestingly, this is the only 2003 shape machine with this particular visual style. It has slightly different headlights, slightly different bodywork, and if you compare it to any of the other NSXs, it looks completely different, especially from the front end. Now, looks aside, and it is a pretty good looking machine, what's it like to drive? Because obviously being pretty much a unique model, surely it would have some different specs to both the newer and older spec NSXs that are available on the game. And yes, it does. The specs are slightly different. It retains the same 3.5 litre engine that all of the NSXs utilise, but this particular car can be tuned to slightly more power than some of the older models at 902 brake horsepower, making it among the most powerful of Jgtc NSXs, and also one of the most powerful Super GT cars in general on GT6. It's unfortunately a non-premium model, so of course you don't get an interior, and the graphics aren't all that great on it. In terms of performance, it's pretty strong. Now, it weighs slightly more, interestingly, than pretty much all of the other NSXs at 1,170 kilos. Making it actually one of the heaviest Super GT cars in the game, around 20 kilos heavier than what would usually be the heaviest. Now, the torque figure on the NSXs isn't generally all that high on the older models, and this one is no exception. It produces 523 foot-pounds of torque, so enough to get the job done, but as with most of the NSXs, not a huge amount. So the power is above average, but so is the weight. The power to weight ratio is a little bit higher than some, a little bit lower than others at 771 horsepower per tonne. So overall it sounds like a pretty good all-round car. Some good points, some not so good points. And the price tag is 750,000, so it's a lot cheaper than all of the NSXs that come after it, the premium models. So again, that works to its advantage. It's 200 grand cheaper than, for instance, the premium Epson NSX. However, there is one thing that I need to warn any potential buyer of this car about. Now, it's not a bad car as such, but I've mentioned before in the series that the NSX has arguably the most tricky handling of any of the Super GT cars to really get the best out of. It's a mid-engine machine, which is rarer in the Super GT class. Most of them are by far front-engined. And that gives it unique, to say the least, handling characteristics, where it has a much lighter front end than many of its rivals. And that does lend it towards having slightly twitchy and prone to oversteer, generally, unfortunately, snap oversteer, ironically enough in lower speed corners, than most of its rivals, such as the Skyline or the Supra. This model in particular, I'm sorry to say, suffers worse than any other NSX so far in the series with this problem. Now, if you've never driven this NSX, the best way to describe it would be, imagine you're driving a car through the corners, but instead of steering with your front wheels, you're actually steering from the centre of the car underneath it, like a trolley. That's what driving this car feels like in the lower speed corners especially. At high speed it's pretty good. The handling's quite fluid, and the mid-engine layout allows it to change direction with more precision than a front-engine machine. However, at low speeds, and you can kind of see it in this video, it's a bit twitchy, to say the least, in the low-end corners. And as I said, it feels kind of weird to drive, and the best way to describe it would be that it doesn't so much turn around corners as pivot. It feels like the car is turning from its centre rather than from the front, and that is a really weird characteristic for a car to have. So unfortunately I cannot say that this car handles well. It doesn't, strictly speaking, handle badly, because it's still a racing car, so it could outrun plenty of other machines. But as far as Super GT cars go, this is possibly the trickiest one of the series so far in terms of handling to get the best out of and to work with. So would I recommend buying it? Well, it has certain things that work in its favour. It's unique in its visual style. It has more power than some. And it's good value for money in terms of price, considering it's a relatively newer model. Downsides, though, are it is heavier, slightly, than its rivals, and the main downside is definitely its low-speed handling, which is so strange to drive that it's not undrivable, but you have to experience it, really. It's very hard to explain how this car drives at low speeds, but it's like nothing else in the game. It's very, very odd the way this car handles. So feel free to give it a try if you fancy something different, perhaps more of a challenge, or if you're just a fan of the car because of its uniqueness. But if you're looking for a pure winner's car, perhaps not, because there are definitely better handling machines out there that are just as fast in a straight line. So that's it for this episode. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.